Hello and welcome back to the Hot Diggity Dog Read to Your Dog at Home series. Now, today we're going to have two chapters, chapter 15 and chapter 16. We're going to catch up with our friend Humboldt, see what kind of situation he's in. 24 hours had passed for Humboldt. By now, Mrs. Gimmage would have raised the alarm and called in Itzhak and Radinsky to help. Maybe even Scotland Yard, knowing Mrs. Gimmage, she was not one to shilly-shally. The small, filthy window in Humboldt's room was open a crack. Humboldt could see a smattering of blue sky through the tree branches, but not all the way down to the street. He reckoned he was about 3 stories up by the amount of stairs they had climbed. The air coming into the room smelled of hops. Was the house close to a brewery? There was no way of telling where he was or how far the troll snatcher had taken him. What did she want with him? The last sliver of light faded and darkness settled upon the room. A vast loneliness descended on Humboldt. He lay down, closed his eyes, and tried to focus on a pleasant image from the sweet shop, but all that filled his head was a pointy gray boot poking through the shop door, and the feeling of that bony hand clamped on his neck. Tomorrow must be different. He prayed she would let him out of his cell. Chapter 16. Humboldt woke to the cheeping of a sparrow. He rolled out of bed directly onto the floor. Then, tucking his arms against his sides, he rolled over and over until he lay lined up against the crack beneath his door. His eyes stung from the layer of dust he had stirred up. He put his thumb against the space to calculate the width, about 2 inches. The space provided a limited view of the outer room. Humboldt tried to flatten himself, wondering if he could squeeze under the door, but it was too tight for a 50-pound troll fond of butterscotch toffee and pistachio ice cream. He scrunched his eyes shut as he used to do while playing hide and seek on the riverbank, thinking he was now invisible. Then he opened his right eye slowly and peeked. The filmy gray light under the door flickered as a shadow crossed it. Abruptly the light was gone, and in its place were those dreadful pointy boots. The doorknob was spinning. Humboldt catapulted himself onto the bed and lay stiff as a royal guard. The door creaked open and the Baba Yaga walked backward into the room. She reached into the side of her cloak and set down a metal tray on the bed. Humboldt sat straight up and, kneading his nightcap in his paws, declared, "We haven't been formally introduced. I'm Humboldt of Albert Street Bridge, currently of Troll. I know all about you, more than you know about yourself. Oh, you brought me breakfast in bed. This is rather splendid. Don't jump to conclusions. You haven't tried it yet." The Baba Yaga scuttled backward out of the door, leaving Humboldt to examine the contents of the tray. The breakfast items were labeled toast, sardine jam, no bones, scoop. Humboldt spread the gray jam on the toast and took a big bite. The toast was hard as a cobblestone, but he made himself swallow it lump by lump. Later in bed, Humboldt rubbed his tummy, regretting his meal, which lay like a cinder block in his stomach. Loneliness seeped into the room like a light rain. Humboldt took a deep breath. He felt that if he started crying, he might never ever stop. Through the crack of his window came a little peep, a small, brave note. Humboldt leapt off his bed and trotted to the window. He squinted. A little blur of brownish-gray feathers was rummaging about on the sill. Humboldt put his mouth to the window. "Psst! over here. It's inhabited. I'm Humboldt of Albert Street Bridge, so pleased to meet you. You've no idea. I've been locked up by a very old woman who has a culinary interest in trolls, I think, who could boil me up for tea at the drop of a hat, and she won't let me out into the light of day for even a second. I was rudely snatched from Mrs. Gimmage's sweet shop of Rose Lane. Do you know it? Near the Lamb and Flag pub. I had no means of defense except peppermint sticks and almond bark. Humboldt had entirely forgotten to breathe in his rush to get his story out before being discovered. Suddenly, he drew in a long inhalation, paused, and then immediately started to hiccup. The bird, a song sparrow in fact, for that's what the pile of feathers turned out to be, stared at Humboldt with an earnestness that intrigued him. Humboldt, remembering his no-fail hiccup remedy, squeezed his paw over his nose, turned around, and bent over with his head between his legs. That way, he could still watch this odd little sparrow and cure the hiccups all at the same time. With every hiccup, the sparrow hopped up and down and gave out a tiny cough. Finally, the hiccups ceased. The sparrow sat down and fluffed herself out to her full proportion. Then she gave out a long, whispery sigh. "Begging your pardon, were you copying me?" Humboldt queried in amazement. The bird, without taking her eyes off Humboldt, trilled a series of high notes. "Can you hop on one foot?" The sparrow cocked her head and pointed her beak to her right and then to her left foot, as if asking for clarification. "That one," Humboldt gestured to the left foot. The bird jumped merrily. "You understand me? How marvelous! By the way, what's your name?" The little bird jumped up and plopped down in a fluff of feathers. "Ploof. Ploof. So that's your name. How lovely." The bird cocked her head and winked an eye. Humboldt taught Ploof to play X's and O's in the dust on the windowsill. Big Ben chimed 6 o'clock, and the bird spread her wings. "Is it time for your dinner then?" Humboldt asked. "I imagine you're missing your worms." "Me too. I'd die for a wrap of watercress and worms." Humboldt pressed his forehead to the window. Ploof pecked him lightly on the nose and then flew off across the steel-gray rooftops of London. "You are coming back, aren't you?" Humboldt called after in a whisper. Thanks so much, friends at home, and hop on board for the next chapter, chapter 17. Cheerio.